Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, Pope Francis kicks off his 5-day visit to Korea today. President Park Geun-hye plans to meet him at the airport before an official welcoming ceremony at the presidential office. South Korea's foreign minister says North Korea will pay a price if it pushes ahead with a fourth nuclear test in defiance of international warnings. Plus, the World Health Organization classifies Kenya as a high-risk country for the spread of the Ebola virus because it has many flights going to and from affected countries in West Africa. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, August 14th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Well, the wait is almost over. Pope Francis will arrive here in Seoul in a little over 4.5 hours' time for his highly anticipated and historic 5-day visit to Korea. This marks the first papal visit to Korea in over 2 decades. President Park Geun-hye will informally greet Pope Francis upon his arrival at Seoul Airport before he heads to the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae, where he's scheduled to receive an official welcoming ceremony. Francis has been at the centre of media attention around the world with his humility and emphasis on the poor since being elected last year. The eyes of the entire world will be on Korea for the next few days to see what kind of message he will deliver during his stay. So, like I mentioned, Pope Francis lands in Korea at around 10:30 a.m. Korea time today for what will be his first trip to Asia as pontiff and the first papal visit to Korea in 25 years. Here's our Hwang Ji-ae with a rundown of the Pope's itinerary during his 5-day stay.
Pope Francis won't be wasting any time upon his arrival in Korea on Thursday morning. After a short welcoming ceremony, he will head to the presidential office and meet President Park Geun-hye. On Friday, the Pope will head to Daejeon to lead a mass at the city's World Cup stadium. There, he will console bereaved families and victims of April's Seoul ferry disaster. On Saturday morning, the Pope will visit Seosomun Martyrs Shrine, where the largest number of Catholics were executed in the 19th century. After paying respect at the shrine, he will parade through Gwanghwamun Square to beatify 124 Korean martyrs. Beatification is a declaration by the Pope as the head of the church that the deceased faithfully lived a holy life and are now dwelling in heaven. And it's no coincidence that the ceremony is taking place in the heart of Seoul, where the Justice Ministry was located around 200 years ago.
The Pope starts from where the martyrs lived their final moments and goes back to where they were declared sinners to beatify them. He is correcting the past and trying to heal the history of the persecution of Catholics.
On Sunday, he will lead a concluding mass for the 6th Asian Youth Day at Hemi Fortress, located in the nation's southwest region. Around 2,000 young Catholics from 23 different Asian countries and some 4,000 young Korean Catholics will take part. On the morning of his last day in Korea, the Pope will hold a mass for peace and reconciliation at Seoul's Myeongdong Cathedral. Many expect the Pope to convey a message of hope and healing to those who are poor and marginalized, as his visit also includes meeting with the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, laid-off workers from Korea's Sangyong Motor, and a trip to a rehabilitation center called 꽃동네. The Pope will fly back to Rome next Monday afternoon. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
And you can stay tuned to Arirang News for all the latest on the Pope's visit over the next 5 days. Now, the presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae has released a book on the Park Geun-hye administration's national security policies. This comes on the heels of Seoul's unexpected proposal for high-level talks with Pyongyang for next week. Pyongyang has yet to reply. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
South Korea offered up more carrots to North Korea on Wednesday, saying the two Koreas could discuss the establishment of a so-called peace regime when the time is right. In a book outlining President Park Geun-hye's national security policies, the Presidential National Security Office stressed the need for inter-Korean military dialogue to build trust and reduce the chances of potential clashes. The so-called peace regime is widely being viewed as a potential peace treaty to replace the armistice accord that brought fighting in the Korean War to a halt. That would work in North Korea's favor, which has repeatedly claimed that a peace treaty was necessary for ending what it called U.S. hostilities and for the ultimate denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. South Korea said, however, Pyongyang must take responsible steps for its torpedo attack on the South Korean warship Cheonan in 2010 and the shelling of a South Korean border island in 2011. Also outlined in the book is South Korea's willingness to gradually open up inter-Korean trade and to allow commercial investment for various economic cooperation projects. In other words, Seoul hinted at a readiness to ease economic sanctions on the North, depending on Pyongyang's change in attitude. This comes 2 days after South Korea made a surprise proposal to North Korea to hold high-level talks next week. A response has yet to be given, but for now, the ball remains in North Korea's court over shifting the tone on the Korean peninsula. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, it might surprise you to know that North Korea is the only country in the world to have conducted nuclear weapons tests in the 21st century. 3, in fact, with the most recent test occurring back in February 2013. Meeting with the head of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization in Seoul on Wednesday, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoo Byung-se warned the North it would pay the price if it does go ahead with a 4th test, as it has threatened. Our Song Ji-son reports.
North Korea is the only country that has conducted nuclear tests in 21st century, and there is, quote, no room for any more nuclear tests for Pyongyang because of increased global pressure and upgraded international monitoring systems on nuclear activities. These remarks come from Lassina Zerbo, the executive secretary of the Preparatory Committee for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, who's visiting Seoul for the first time since taking office. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se also warned that Pyongyang will pay a high price from the international community if it pushes forward with a 4th nuclear test. After its 3rd nuclear test in February last year, Pyongyang has repeatedly threatened to conduct more. The United Nations General Assembly adopted the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty in 1996, but it has yet to enter into force, as 8 of 44 nuclear-armed countries have not yet ratified the treaty, including the U.S. and China. Zerbo vowed to urge Pyongyang to join the consensus on nuclear testing, adding that once the treaty enters into force, the legally binding framework will stop anyone from doing a nuclear test, and North Korea will be no exception. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, the South Korean government has outlined a set of measures to clamp down on physical and mental mistreatment in the armed forces following a series of really rather awful bullying scandals and also suicides involving young soldiers serving in isolated frontline units. The Defense Ministry said on Wednesday that it would offer incentives to whistleblowers who report physical and verbal attacks. The ministry also said it would set up an online system that would allow victims to alert their families and friends if they suffer abuse. Critics, however, say the guidelines are not that different from previous reform measures that followed similar incidents in the past. They added the new measures will do little to lower the fundamental stress level of the soldiers or grant them more welfare benefits.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, Korea faces a great number of very big challenges going forward, and making a safe, fair and equal society is just one of them. The National Assembly is tasked with passing bills to get stuff done, but nothing has really been happening amid a long-running bipartisan deadlock. For answers and to hear his plan for getting the Parliament out of this rut, our Ji Myung-gil sat down with the National Assembly Speaker Cheong Wa Dae for this exclusive interview.
주는 메시지는 그간의 우리 사회의 기품과 가치관이 문제가 있었다는 것이 드러난 것으로 저는 판단합니다. 건전하고 건강한 사회, 그것을 위해서 제가 의장으로서 여러 가지 노력을 할 생각으로 있습니다.
Thousands of bills awaiting approval at the National Assembly, and people might just think that lawmakers are not doing their jobs. What can be done?
지금 전 세계의 경우에도 보면 국회에 대한 국민의 신뢰는 그렇게 높은 편이 아닙니다. 미국도 9% 정도로 제가 듣고 있고요. 지금 우리나라는 한 6% 수준에 있습니다. 우선 국회의원들은 자기 본분에 충실해야 됩니다. 그래서 제가 상시국회를 만들고 1년 중에 7, 8월 달 외에는 늘 국회가 열려 있는 거죠. 요일별로 제가 회의를 운영할 수 있도록 국회 규정을 만들려고 합니다. 그것이 통과가 되면 9월 달에 한 달 후에 지금 되지 않나 싶습니다만.
Removing lawmakers' special privileges has long been an issue in Korea, but the Assembly Speaker stressed the need for lawmakers to be given certain privileges within the confines of Parliament. However, he warned lawmakers against using them for vested interests.
국회 내에서 하는 국회의원의 발언은 보호를 받습니다. 이것은 굉장히 중요합니다. 검찰, 경찰 이런 여러 가지 권력이 있기 때문에 그 권력으로부터 국회의원을 보호를 해야 됩니다. 그 권력이 두려워서 해야 될 말을 안 한다거나 하는 말을 왜곡하면 안 되지 않겠어요? 그래서 그 면책 특권이 보장이 되는 것입니다.
In regards to North Korea, Cheong pledged the National Assembly would play a better role in improving relations with Pyongyang.
우리 국회가 우리의 일로 정부와 같이 2인 3각 하듯이 같이 나서야 된다 하는 것이 제 지론이고, 그것이 남북을 하나 만들어가는 화해와 협력을 통해서 궁극적으로는 하나로 만들어가는 아주 중요한 첫 단추가 될 수 있다 이렇게 보기 때문에.
As Assembly Speaker, you promised to hold inter-Korean parliamentary talks during your term. Do you think this is realistic?
저는 충분히 가능하다고 보고요. 저는 운명적으로 내가 의장에 있는 동안에 그 남북 간의 국회 회담을 통해서 남북이 이제 서로 대화를 여는 아주 중요한 역사적인 기점이 되어야 된다고 우리 박근혜 대통령께서도 상당히 긍정적으로 그렇게 보고 있다 이렇게 말씀드릴 수 있습니다.
Thank you for giving your precious time to hold this one-on-one interview with you, the Assembly Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
Now, the world's largest math conference is up and running in Seoul this week and will run through next week. President Park Geun-hye was there to open the event on Wednesday, and she emphasized the importance of math in our everyday lives. She also asked the participants to make the subject a little less intimidating for the rest of us. Our Choi Sun reports.
It's the first time Korea is hosting the International Congress of Mathematicians, which has been held every 4 years since 1897. Organizers of the Seoul Congress say Korea's rapid development in the field of mathematics was a major reason it was awarded the global event. This was also reflected in the decision to have a Korean mathematician deliver a keynote speech. Under the slogan Dreams and Hopes for Late Starters, this year's host nation has also offered grants to nearly 1,000 mathematicians from developing countries so they can participate. President Park Geun-hye at the opening ceremony highlighted the role mathematics plays in the development of humanity.
한 사람의 뛰어난 창의력과 아이디어가 세계를 움직이는 창조와 혁신의 시대에 진입하였고 수학을 통해서 배우는 창의성과 논리적, 합리적 사고야말로 미래를 이끌어갈 인재들이 반드시 갖추어야 할 요소이기도 합니다.
The president also talked about the need to bridge the gap between the academia of mathematics and the general public.
수학이 수학자들만의 학문이 아니라 미래를 이끌어갈 젊은이들과 일반 대중들이 친근하게 접하고 이해할 수 있는 학문으로 발전해 가기를 기대하고 있습니다.
To achieve that very goal, a list of events, such as a special lecture by James Simons, a mathematician turned hedge fund manager, and an open meeting with a laureate of the Congress's Distinguished Fields Medal are lined up. The event will run at COEX Southern Seoul until August 21st. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Now, if you take a bus or a subway here in Korea, you'll find quite a few people, mostly students and white-collar workers, hunched over their smartphones reading online comic strips, or as they're most commonly known, Webtoons. The popularity of these digital comics has exploded over the past 10 years and it isn't showing any signs of letting up. Park Ji-won tells us what the future may hold for the market.
35-year-old artist Kim Pung publishes a weekly webtoon on a major portal website in Korea. He often accesses his own work through his smartphone and checks the responses of viewers, something that keeps him connected to an industry he's very much invested in.
I see a great potential in the industry. Nowadays, public perception about webtoons has improved greatly, and we see many cases of webtoons being adapted into different genres of art or becoming the source of other products. I see the future of webtoons in a rosy light.
Since debuting in 2003, Kim has witnessed the growth of the webtoon industry in Korea.
Back then, we didn't even have the word webtoon. We called them internet cartoons. It was an infancy period.
The history of web cartoons in Korea dates back about 10 years now. Back in late 1990s and early 2000s, so-called internet cartoons were mainly composed of personal anecdotes or were short comic strips. The webtoon market began growing in 2003 when Daum, a major Korean portal website, started to provide webtoon portal services. Naver, another major portal site, jumped in 2005, triggering a webtoon boom here. Webtoons then began delving into all sorts of genres like action and thrillers and began to involve more serious, large-scale plots. By 2010, Webtoons began a source of story banks for other genres. Nearly 50 Webtoons produced in 2012 and some 40 Webtoons produced last year have been adapted into films, dramas, and even character licensing contracts. As of 2014, Webtoons began providing translated contents to the global market through a diverse set of platforms, such as Naver's global instant messenger program Line, to meet a wider audience outside of Korea. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now it's time for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Thursday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. The World Health Organization has designated Kenya as a high-risk country for the spread of Ebola. The warning is the most serious issued by the WHO on the probability that the contagious and deadly virus could spread to the other side of the continent. Kenya, located in eastern Africa, is a major transport hub with more than 70 flights per week from West Africa. Nairobi has not yet shown indication that it would ban flights from the 4 West African states struck by the Ebola outbreak. Meanwhile, the WHO has released new figures on the death toll in that region. Thus far, 56 new deaths and 128 new cases were reported between Sunday and Monday this week. Liberia was the worst hit with 32 new additional Ebola deaths. Now, following the clearance to use experimental drugs in treating Ebola victims, Canada has indicated that it would donate up to 1,000 doses of its test medication to help fight the outbreak. Foreign ministers of the European Union will convene an emergency meeting on Friday to form a response to current global crises with a focus on events unfolding in Iraq and Ukraine. EU's foreign policy chief Catherine Ashton announced the meeting, which was welcomed by Italy's foreign minister, who said it must produce a decision on a strong and coordinated course of action. The German foreign ministry had earlier said there was an existential threat to ethnic and religious minorities in Iraq and for the region at large, underlining the importance for a European response. And over in Brazil, presidential candidate Eduardo Campos has died in a plane crash, which also killed 6 others on board the private jet. The plane was flying in bad weather, headed for the coastal city of Santos, before it crashed in a dense residential area. The 49-year-old was viewed as a business-friendly candidate, placing 3rd in recent polls ahead of the upcoming October election. President Dilma Rousseff, who is up for re-election, said she would suspend all campaigning for 3 days of mourning. And finally, Edward Snowden has made another appearance on U.S. media, this time on the cover of Wired magazine, released on Wednesday. In the story, Snowden tells the Tech Culture magazine that he is still holding on to hope that he will return home one day to the United States, even if it means life behind bars. The NSA contractor turned leaker of state intelligence said he would be willing to volunteer for prison if it served the right purpose.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where the 2014 Wegmans LPGA Classic is set to take place starting today for its 4th major of the season. And all eyes are on Park Geun-hye to defend their title. The 26-year-old, who won 3 major titles last season, including the Wegmans LPGA Classic, will look to win her first major of the season as she goes into the event as the defending champion. And grouped with Park Geun-hye will be Lexi Thompson and Kerry Webb for the first 2 rounds of the event. Meanwhile, Korean-American Michelle Wie will not be participating in the event due to her thumb injury. And now shifting over to other sporting news, the Forbes magazine released their annual list of highest paid athletes of 2014, and Kim Yeon-ah made the top 10 list as one of the highest paid female athletes in the world. The figure queen, who retired after the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics earlier this year, was ranked number 4 in the Forbes magazine's list of highest paid female athletes in the world. Numbers show that although she made just $300,000 in prize money, she made $16 million in endorsements and sponsors. Meanwhile, 3 tennis stars were ahead of her on the list with Maria Sharapova, Li Na, and Serena Williams. And now finishing things off with some Wednesday night KBO action, the Tucson Bears and the Hanwha Eagles were rained out, but the SK Wyverns were able to beat the LG Twins 8-5, and the Nexen Heroes also beat the Lotte Giants 8-5 as well. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the highlights between the Kia Tigers and the NC Dinos. And of course, going into the game here, we go over to the bottom of the first. Lee Dae-hung RBI triple to right center gives the Kia Tigers the 1-0 lead. Shifting to the 5th inning of the game, Lee Ho-jun deep to right center, gone, and we're tied 1-1. The bottom of the inning, Kang Han-woo RBI single to right gives the Kia Tigers the lead before Kim Ju-chan makes it 3-1 thanks to his RBI double. When the 6th inning, bases loaded for Na Sung-bum, infield single scores 1 before the NC Dinos tie it up once again with a sac fly by Eric Thames, and the game is tied at 3 apiece. 8th inning with a man on, Na Sung-bum at bat, and here it goes. Check this out. This one an RBI triple, and the NC Dinos rally back to take the lead 4-3 and the win. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, it's going to be another gloomy and rainy day today across the regions. Southern regions have been receiving on and off heavy showers since yesterday, and it's likely to continue till tomorrow. In the meantime, the upper parts of the peninsula will have a cloudy day today. So as the clouds and rain overtake the peninsula, it's going to be much cooler than yesterday. Temperatures will be hovering below 25 degrees Celsius in many areas, while upper areas will have a slightly warmer temperature. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. The low in Seoul is kicking off at 22, then the high in the capital will rise to 27, while Daegu and Busan will see highs of 24, and Gwangju will get up to 25 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 26 and 24, and Dokdo should rise to 23. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Jeon, for the weather there. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Stay tuned to Arirang for the latest news on Pope Francis's historic visit to Korea. We'll be back throughout the day with many more news updates, including stories about the Pope. And I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.